All right, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to objectively audit a series of highly controversial claims from our source text. The material we're looking at presents what it calls a full-blown forensic indictment. It argues that powerful aerospace cartels and intelligence agencies are literally using weaponized, patented pathogens to eliminate corporate threats. We're going to walk step by step through the text's analysis of the 2024 Boeing whistleblower purge to understand exactly how this invisible architecture of assassination supposedly operates in the shadows. So the source text bypasses all your standard corporate PR explanations to hit us with this chilling question right out of the gate. I mean, think about it. If a massive legal and financial threat is looming, how do powerful entities permanently silence a witness without drawing the intense scrutiny of a homicide investigation? This central mystery is our hook into the really dark, hidden mechanisms alleged in our source material.
Which brings us to Section 1, the whistleblower purge. To set the stage here, the source examines two high-profile aerospace whistleblowers. Both of these guys were scheduled to give highly damaging testimony, and both died within 2 months of each other while under immense public scrutiny. The text contrasts these two cases to highlight what it calls an evolution in tactics. So on one hand, we have John Barnett, found dead of a gunshot wound in his truck, right in the middle of giving depositions. The text argues this is an incredibly messy method, right? It immediately invites police investigations, ballistics analysis, the whole shebang. But then we have 45-year-old Joshua Dean, a perfectly healthy quality auditor. The source frames Dean's sudden death from a severe infection as a terrifyingly clean alternative, a supposedly natural assassination.
Now you really have to look at the timeline of his collapse, because this is what the source flags as a horrifying anomaly. A perfectly healthy 45-year-old man doesn't just suddenly succumb to community-acquired MRSA like this. He went to the hospital for trouble breathing, was rapidly intubated for pneumonia, and then, boom, a systemic MRSA explosion. He had to be airlifted for ECMO life support, leading to total organ failure and necrosis, all in just 14 days. The author's analysis argues that this rapid cascade is basically a mathematical and medical impossibility for a healthy adult under normal circumstances.
Moving right along to Section 2, the perfect deniable murder.
This brings us to the core thesis of the material. The text argues that the sudden MRSA infection that killed Joshua Dean wasn't just terrible luck, it bears the precise forensic signature of a targeted biological hit. To explain how that's even possible, the text alleges that operatives utilize a covert Fort Detrick playbook, and this relies heavily on gain-of-function research. We aren't talking about scraping some standard bacteria off a gym towel. This is the deliberate, laboratory process of cultivating hyper-virulent strains of naturally occurring pathogens to absolutely maximize their lethality and speed. Specifically, the document claims operatives deploy what they call a PVL toxin upgrade. They actively select a strain of MRSA that overexpresses the Pantin-Valentine leukocidin, or PVL, toxin. This is a terrifying cytotoxin designed to literally hunt down and destroy white blood cells, your body's primary defense, and then rapidly liquefy lung tissue. The text points out that this perfectly matches the sudden necrotizing pneumonia that Joshua Dean presented with.
Okay, on to Section 3, armoring the pathogen.
So, let's zoom in further, because the source points out a major logistical hurdle here. You can't just spray raw bacteria at somebody. Ultraviolet light, temperature shifts, and the sticky mucus in the target's throat would destroy the pathogen long before it ever reached their bloodstream. To ground these massive claims about how a pathogen is actually protected, the source conducts a forensic audit of actual unclassified U.S. commercial medical patents. The analysis suggests the deep state doesn't file patents for assassination weapons. No, they hide their protocols in plain sight as novel drug delivery systems. The source outlines 3 specific patents that allegedly serve as the blueprints for an invisible assassin, detailing exactly how to armor, aerosolize, and target a biological payload. Let's look at the first patent the text cites, US 10610492B2. The text details how operatives allegedly armor the lab-grown MRSA inside PLGA nanoparticles. Now, these are biodegradable polymer shells heavily researched in the pharmaceutical sector for delivering fragile medicines into the lungs. In a weaponized application, the text claims this cross-linked shell protects the bacteria from environmental degradation. It's essentially microscopic body armor. And the size of these shells is absolutely crucial. The text highlights a mathematical sweet spot, 200 to 500 nanometers.
At this exact microscopic size, these polymer shells are small enough to completely bypass the sticky mucus net in your throat, yet just large enough to evade immediate consumption by your lungs' white blood cells. The source basically frames this as the ultimate biological hack.
Let's get into the deployment in Section 4, the silent aerosol strike. Now we zoom down to the hardware itself. We have an armored, hypervirulent pathogen. But how is this microscopic payload actually delivered to a target standing in a crowded public space without causing a panic? The text points to piezoelectric nebulization. Rather than using loud pneumatic compressors or chemical propellants, this second patent describes a crystal that physically vibrates when electricity is applied. It vibrates a microscopic mesh up to 130,000 times per second. This ultrasonic sound silently shatters the liquid pathogen into a perfectly uniform, invisible, dry fog. The text claims an operative can activate this silently from a device the size of a breath spray, an umbrella tip, or even a smartphone.
And this brilliantly illustrates the targeting mechanism. The third patent, US 5586550A, ensures the aerosolized droplets are engineered to an exact aerodynamic size, 1 to 5 microns. Why? Well, if they're larger, they just get swallowed. If they're smaller, they get exhaled right back out. But at exactly 1 to 5 microns, they bypass all upper respiratory defenses and settle permanently into the deep alveolar tissue of the lungs.
The material then breaks down the tactical execution chronologically, calling it the pass by strike. First, an operative simply walks past a target in a stagnant airspace. Think a hotel lobby or a parking garage. They silently extrude the invisible cloud. Second, the cloud just hangs there, suspended right in the target's breathing zone. And third, the target takes a single, normal breath, effortlessly inhaling millions of weaponized colony-forming units.
Once those 1 to 5 micron droplets bypass the throat defenses and settle into the deep lungs, the fatal breach occurs. Safely inside the warm, moist environment of the alveolar tissue, the biodegradable PLGA armor simply melts away. The text states it dumps a massive, overwhelming payload of PVL-positive MRSA directly into the highly vascularized lung tissue, instantly breaching the bloodstream before the immune system can even register that it's under attack.
Finally, Section 5, the perfect alibi.
So the crucial point here is the aftermath. Why utilize this incredibly complex, patented methodology? Well, the source argues the entire goal of the system is to provide absolute plausible deniability. According to this forensic breakdown, the medical cover-up happens automatically without the doctors even realizing they're part of it. There is no ballistic evidence to investigate. There is no exotic Russian nerve agent to trigger an international incident. The pathogen perfectly mimics a natural, albeit hyper-aggressive, community-acquired pneumonia. And most importantly, overwhelmed coroners simply record the death as natural causes because they do not run mass spectrometry to look for submicron PLGA polymer shells in the lung tissue. To them, it's just terrible luck.
But surprisingly, despite the millions of dollars of aerospace engineering required to pull this off, the source text claims this highly advanced assassination protocol has a glaring weakness. It is mathematically neutralized by the electrostatic fibers of a simple, properly fitted N95 or P100 mask. Because the weapon relies entirely on 3-micron particles entering the deep lung tissue, a simple particulate respirator physically captures the payload, completely defeating the strike.
Which leaves us with this incredibly provocative final thought from the text. We have to wonder about the dual-use nature of the medical technology hiding right in front of us. Are the very tools designed to heal us, pulmonary therapeutics, microencapsulation, piezoelectric aerosolizers, being quietly repurposed in the shadows? It's a fascinating, if entirely unsettling, perspective on the intersection of medicine, patents, and power. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.